Now, a judge in Papua New Guinea will decide whether a prison set up for refugees is legal. The Manus Island jail was created to hold people trying to seek asylum in Australia. Human rights groups have criticised the way detainees are being treated. Let's go to our correspondent Andrew Thomas now. He's joining us live from Manus Island. What will the judge be looking at, Andrew?
Well, about 200 or 300 of the prisoners held on Manus Island, overall there are nearly 1,000 there, have joined one of two cases, in fact, that are currently before the Papua New Guinean court system. And a decision on one of those cases should come any day. What the refugees are arguing is that their imprisonment here on Manus Island in Papua New Guinea and their transfer here from Australia, where they first sought asylum in the first place, are both illegal, and that the conditions that they are being held in here are akin to torture, and all of that is against Papua New Guinea's constitution, they say. If they were to win that case, it would have profound implications not only for their own lives, but also more broadly for Australia's policy, its controversial policy towards refugees and asylum seekers who try to reach its shores by boat. Instead, they are immediately transferred either here to Manus Island in Papua New Guinea or to another Pacific Island country, Nauru, with no prospect of ever being resettled in Australia. The refugees I've spoken to here on Manus Island say that the physical conditions here are bad enough. It's extremely hot, very, very humid. There are malarial mosquitoes all the time. They don't have air conditioning. They say the food is appalling. But far worse than the physical torment, they say, is the mental anguish, not knowing what is going to happen to them. Many of the men here have been held in detention as prisoners for more than 2 years, with no prospect really of knowing when they're going to come out, knowing only that if they do come out as refugees, they'll have to stay here in Papua New Guinea, a place they say is not suitable for refugees. It has no history of resettling refugees. Well, getting access to Manus Island is very difficult, very rare, particularly for journalists. We have managed to get here, and we've had a rare glimpse inside the facility.
Journalists and cameras are banned, but by boat you can get close to the Manus Island Regional Processing Centre. What is more accurately a prison for nearly 1,000 men is right on the coast. The refugees locked inside want to talk. Some have bribed cleaners and guards for phones. What do you hope is going to happen?
I have learned that there is nothing such a hope. This word is deleted in my vocabulary. I have seen even people, they were religious before, now they are atheists, because they said if there would be a God, they would have saved us by now. We are human. We are not animals.
The prison was established as a deterrent, along with another for families in another Pacific Island country, Nauru. Australia's government said people taking boats seeking asylum would either be turned around at sea or deported straight to much poorer Pacific countries with no prospect of ever living in Australia.
The policy worked. The boats of refugees have almost entirely stopped coming to Australia. But the legacy is that people are still locked up in there more than 2 years after arriving on Australian soil.
We did manage to drive past security guards and through the facility. Those we've talked to say conditions inside are terrible. In the past, prisoners have sewn their lips together in protest. Last year, during unrest inside, outsiders broke in and beat one man to death. About 50 men, the first assessed as genuine refugees, have been released. They live in this nearby transit centre. It's still guarded, but they can leave and walk to the local town. But so far, only one man has left Manus Island altogether. Reza Molagolipur was an engineer in Iran. He says he fled after uncovering corruption. An Australian friend bought him a plane ticket to Papua New Guinea's capital, Port Moresby. There, he's about to start a low-paying job.
I'm happy that I could live there to here, but I'm getting happiness when I'm getting out of from a terrible situation to bad situation, and at the moment I'm in bad situation.
Papua New Guinea is too poor with too much crime, he thinks. Other refugees on Manus hope a legal case will go their way if a court declares their transfer and imprisonment unconstitutional.
We are asking for the release of all the asylum seekers and refugees from Papua New Guinea back to Australia. Second is that we're asking the Australian government and PNG government to compensate them.
Australia's government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on Papua New Guinea for taking its refugees. That's been worth it, it says. The policy's been a success. But those locked up don't see it in quite the same way.
Well, you heard one of the prisoners in my report there saying that he'd lost all hope. For some others I've spoken to, this court case, or the two court cases, are their only hope. They see that as the only viable future for them, that the court case goes their way and that the whole policy of transferring them here and imprisoning them here will be thrown out and they can start again in another bureaucracy wherever that may lead them. This whole system of offshore detention that Australia has in place has been heavily criticised by organisations like the United Nations for a few years now. One politician in New Zealand recently called these facilities, these prisons, modern concentration camps. Others aren't quite as extreme as that, but certainly conditions are extremely tough. And being here, as I have been for the last few days, it's hard not to feel sympathy for those locked up inside for more than 2 years as asylum seekers, refugees who've committed no crimes.
Andrew, thank you very much for that. That's our correspondent Andrew Thomas joining us live from Papua New Guinea's Manus Island.